I'm stuck now. This is what's going on.
Don't make decisions in vulnerability. You might find yourself on the top of 7 mountains in 7 different countries.
If we're upset with others abandoning us, but we're abandoning ourselves first.
I don't get to choose when I die, but I sure get to choose how I live. Friends, today we have Lori Wallace on the podcast. Hello, Lori.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here today.
Oh, I'm so excited you're here. Interview Valet introduced us. I love all of their people. So thank you.
Yes.
Shout out to them.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us, Lori, in a nutshell, give us a little bit of background.
20 years plus, I have been an executive recruiter. And the reason why I did that was to practice radical kindness. And the reason why I felt I needed to do that hot and heavy was because I was 8 months pregnant when the Twin Towers fell. And I went into labor in my living room. My husband whipped me on over to the hospital. I was there with many women. There were a lot of babies born on that day.
Was there really?
Oh,
Where
yeah.
were you living in the country? Tell me that.
I was in the Bay Area. So I was in Oakland.
Okay.
And with the first tower, I thought this is a devastating accident. And as soon as I realized that it was part of the trauma of the world, and I had a new baby, my first and only that I was bringing. I wish I had a whole clan like you. Next life, I get to be
Next
Jenn.
life. You can come visit me anytime. You'll be like, whoa, that one was a blessing. These 7 are expensive.
7, lucky number.
Yes.
So, it was quite a day. There were so many women in there, but thanks to the doctors and the pharmacist, kept my baby in, but was laid off. I didn't think you could do that when you just had a baby. But I was laid off. I was an executive at a bank. I was during those days where we had cold calling. You remember when we?
I remember that. Like, I literally got my first job as a financial advisor, and I showed up to work. And I'm like, "Hi, I'm Jenn. I'm the new financial advisor." She's like, "Sweet. There's a phone book and a booth and a phone." I'm like, "Oh no, I'm not call center." And she's like, "Honey, it's the same thing."
Oh yeah. That was the day. Now we can tell on our phones if we know the person, and it even says probably spam.
Exactly. And those probably spams do not get answered over here.
It's so different. And that was my job, across the nation. And I thought, wait a minute, I need to practice radical kindness. And ultimately, my recruiter recruited me to be a recruiter. So I moved to Oregon and took a pay cut from $180,000 to $40,000 draw. That's not even real money. You have to give it back next month.
Right.
So that was a big choice. And I did it because I wanted to, as I mentioned, practice kindness. But what I found out was recruiting in general is very, very selfish. And it's just about money. It was really just about sales. And I came in to help people in this liminal transitional space. My general manager would be counting the minutes. And I'm saying, hey, I need an hour with this person. They've been let go. Their spouse is terribly afraid and anxious. They have a child that needs special needs. They need help. So I quit and I started my own agency, and I just said, hey, there's not enough love here. So I'm going to change recruiting from headhunting to human connection. And that's the beginning that's led now to Career Ecology, just flooded it with human and beautiful feminine values.
Oh my goodness, I love this. And do you recruit for a specific arena? Like sometimes people are headhunters for doctors or lawyers or different specialties.
Yes, actually, it turned out it was healthcare for me. Because when I came out of college, I really wanted to work with terminally ill children at the time.
Oh my gosh.
Can you? Oh, I know. A mother of 7. Don't even want to think.
No.
And I knew that you can see my theme is I want to be there when people are in pain.
Yeah, you are.
That's it. So healthcare it was. And I've worked with CEOs. I've helped hospitals hire CEOs, and I've helped administrative assistants come in and hire for that support CEOs, and lab assistants up through directors and VPs, all through healthcare from, these last 20 years. And we're talking through the Great Recession, which was very, very difficult time, and through COVID. It's been very interesting.
Oh my goodness. What was worse? The 2007-8 crisis or through the COVID crisis?
Oh my gosh, that is such an astute question. I usually offer up and tell people it really was the Great Recession, but I don't think that's what one would think. COVID being so global and terrifying, and all the people that died. But you
Right.
know what? From a psychic standpoint, even though I would say we have this cultural issue that occurred, so it was very psychic, very psychological. But in 2008, 9, when that was going on, and we've seen the movies, the collapse, the global collapse, we were just moments away from that. That fear somehow did permeate very quickly. Whereas if you remember with COVID at the beginning, it was a little bit like, oh, this is different. I get to work out of home and make some bread.
Yeah,
Remember
right,
how we
right, right.
sort of,
No, right. I did COVID in Hawaii. Okay, so I'm like, if this is all blowing up, we're gonna be at the beach. I'm just letting you know.
there
So
you go.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
Like it wasn't. What I don't know. I just didn't have the doomsday energy around it, even though there was a lot of tragedy for me, at least.
Right. There was
Yeah,
something very different and opening, and we had the hope that it would bring us together. But of course, it was very real and showed where our fractures were, which is
yeah.
real. So I'm saying, okay, now I know where there's more pain. But what happened in 2008, 9 was this fear of if we have this full financial collapse, that there would be mass layoffs
Right.
and that people wouldn't be able to just work out of home. They'd have no jobs. I actually have one client who was murdered by one of his employees as a result of this overwhelming fear that overtook his rational mind.
Wow.
I was in Northern California, and the tent cities just popped up and were just absolutely everywhere. And I had friends that were single women who were afraid to be going through this time without a partner. And I remember some of them even just struggling with love and really realizing, I want to have some sort of security, a partner. So I saw a lot going on. That was harder, kind of more in a spike way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And
That's
it set me on a
interesting.
path of, I would say 2008, 9 was really the path that brought me to career ecology, which is what I'm
Yeah.
doing now. Because believe it or not, and I know you'll appreciate this actually, given how you climbed up that 7 mountains after the car accident. Obviously, you were cracked wide open, and
Yes. Yes.
and
Vulnerable. I'm like, don't make decisions in vulnerability. You might find yourself on the top of 7 mountains in 7 different countries and 7 different continents.
that's so amazing. I just love that. And within 2, 3, what was it, 3 years?
Yeah, 2.5 years from when it
Yeah,
started
it's
to ended. Yeah.
oh my god. That's
Yeah.
some mighty life force going on there. And but you obviously were cracked wide open, put into a new path. So when 2008 came and I saw the depth of loneliness and fear, I tried something then, which was a huge failure, but actually not,
Okay.
because it was the beginning of my entering into the idea of trying to help thousands, if not millions. And I started something called Kula Love at the time. And what that was a dating site that
Okay.
I know, because my girlfriends were saying, I got to plug my nose and get on match.com. I don't like the way I'm treated there. So I thought, well, let's bring in authenticity. Let's match people at a place of passion and truly knowing each other. So I built the whole thing over 2 years with a laid off engineer. And when
Okay.
I sent it off electronically to some auditors in Ireland, after 3 days, they came back and said, well, you could probably fit 10 people on this before it breaks.
Oh no.
So, yeah, the programmer had unfortunately, every time there was a change, he had not taken out the old code. So, what that taught me though was that what it meant and the process for how to intelligently scale human support. As a recruiter working one on one, maybe I'm helping 20 people in a year, but at
Hmm.
that time, I knew, and I think you're doing this with your podcast, how can we reach as many people as destiny will allow us to connect to that need a healing message about authenticity, that
Hmm.
you are free outside the box that you were born into, or as you develop, that you're told you belong, and that's as far as you can go. How does it actually serve life, love, the planet, all of us, if we crash out of that and decide to show up as we are? And that's what's led me to this post COVID moment with career ecology and why I'm here with you today.
And so do you feel it was, I mean, because obviously you're a tender heart,
Yeah.
right? Everything you've kind of been on the path of is just love and taking care of people in pain.
Yeah.
Um, but do you feel that when that dating app didn't go, was
Mm-hmm.
that kind of a line in the sand that like, hey, this is a pivot to another way and I need to put all my energy this direction?
You are amazingly psychic. I'm freaking out with every single question you're asking. It's amazing. Yeah. Last night when I was going to sleep, I was thinking that you and I'm getting my truth tears right now. I was thinking
Oh,
that we are going to connect and on this topic and what you've done in your life, feeling it. And and I was thinking about, what were the greatest challenges, the biggest mountains? And there are so many in my 58 years that have been quite traumatic, at a physical, practical, emotional level. But the
yeah.
most important one I realized when I went to sleep that kind of was with me and I woke up with was finding my voice as a woman.
Yes.
I was raised to be compliant. And that's not only because of my parenting, they loved me, but they were 50s parents. But growing up in this country that we're in, and maybe the world is this way too. But women, we're here to go ahead and support the system as it's been built,
Mhm.
which was pretty much men around the table and not women. So it wasn't there. And so I learned pretty early on how to come in and make sure that I didn't take any space in the room. How could I would come into these meetings as an executive at the bank and I would literally tip my head and say, "Hi, what should we talk about?" It was a very almost animalistic signal
Yeah.
that I am not going to bring my full power, so you have nothing to worry about. When 2008 came, and my child at that time was 6 years old or so, 6 or 7, and I'm married to my soulmate, all of these experiences cracked me open also with catastrophic autoimmune, that it was time for me to advocate and listen to my own voice because I couldn't be a protective mother if I wasn't doing that. I
Mhm.
couldn't bring the work forward and support people in the manner that they hoped and needed and expected. And my body was going to stay on multiple pills with constant rashes and all sorts of pain in my joints and in my gut, had I not sat in front of a doctor one day and said, "Hey, I just Googled my symptoms." And he kicked me out. He said, "That's not allowed. You're not allowed to look up your own body." And I just said, "Well, I am sure that I have candida. I am sure I
Yeah.
can tell from the
Yeah.
symptoms," right?
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
got it head to toe. And I ultimately made it to another one of my doctors who closed the door, whispered, and said, "I believe in this, but I'm not allowed to in our organization. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a test. We're going to see to what extent you're ill in this area. And then after that, I'm going to go ahead and just give you some free meds that come from our drug reps." And sure enough, the chart was 0 to 5 for candida
Yeah.
infection through your body. I was off the charts. I wasn't even at 5. So he gave me all these meds, and that was the beginning of moving outside of only allopathic medicine or having to work for another person's precisely in the way that it's been prescribed, in my role kept small, being paid less, not having the voice around the boardroom, whatever it was. And
Right.
all the while it was for love. It wasn't out of anger. It wasn't out of,
Right. Right. It was for
that's not my archetype,
connection.
you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It was really truly about, if I don't show up and speak, then is love served? So I work on that every day. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, I get it. And I'll tell you, nothing like having a kid. I think that was a big one for me, right? So I got into that car accident and it made me realize I don't get to choose when I die, but I sure get to choose how I live. And I need to start making choices that I start living.
Wow.
And I just remember like sitting in my room after I came home. I hugged all my kids. They had no clue how close they were to being orphans.
Wow.
And I thought, man, do I want them to be this mom? And my answer was no.
Yes.
Right? My answer was no because and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm their parent. I'm modeling what's
Mhm.
possible for them.
Yeah.
I don't even want them to be what I am." So then that like next year I started doing this bucket list and all the things I wanted to try and experience and explore and be and do and whatever. And then I started doing me again. And contrary to my prior belief, the water elevated for all of us.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it was
Wow.
just one of those things where it's like, "Oh, mom's happy. I have permission to be happy. Mom's excited. I have permission to be excited. Mom's doing this goal. I have a permission to go for a goal." I mean, it is
Yeah.
amazing how much they watch,
Yes.
right? Like, I have a calendar on my wall that allows me to keep track of everything. My daughter's like, "Can I have a calendar?" Yeah. And they're writing their goals on their calendar, right? And you're just like, it's the silliest little things that they're always keeping an eye on. And when you have a child, For me,
Yeah.
at least, and it sounds like for you, that
Yeah.
was your accountability partner.
My son, my singular son, who's named William Wallace, by the way. So,
I love it.
little Braveheart going on there. And
Yes.
he was a significant part of breaking me open. He really was that partner. A funny little story, and I wonder how often this has happened to you as a mom. One day when William was like 4, and this is just a small example of how he teaches me. It was time for a bath. And I said, okay, honey, it's time for your bath. It's your regular time. Let's go. And he didn't stomp his foot this time. He didn't run the other way, which are all things that I could reactively, as a parent at the time without the tools, reactively deal with. I knew what to do, like chase him.
Yeah.
But on this particular day, he laughed at me. And I didn't know what to do with that. I mean, I had no credibility. And I remember I went to our family therapist that week and I said, I'm stuck now. This is what's going on. And he right away said, tell me about what happens at bedtime. And I said, I read him a story, of course. And he said, what happens when he asks you to keep going? Because they always do.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, well, I tell him, okay, one more page and then it's nighttime for you. So I set my limits. And he said, no, you don't. I don't want you to give him another page when he asks. You can give it to him if he's been a really good boy and he ate all his greens. So you can say, honey, we're almost at the end of the chapter, but I'm going to add an extra page for you because you've been so great with eating your greens at dinner. But if he asks, you got to hold that boundary and that structure for him because you're the mom and you say, no, it is best for you for your safety that you go to sleep. And I know it's good for you. So I tried it the very next day. Our relationship moved forward leaps. So what he showed me was trust my own instincts,
Yeah.
stand for the loving truth, do not be afraid of the tension moment. Don't be bullied over by somebody else's stronger. I mean, my son's only 6, but I felt like,
Oh,
okay.
yeah. Right. Right. Right.
So yeah, he's a big part and I'm very thankful. And he's 22 and he still teaches me to this day. Don't these kids just teach us every day?
Every day, always
Yeah.
something new.
And
I'm
you've
like,
got
you
7.
little mirror, just stop, just for 5 minutes, just stop mirroring something back to me that needs to be addressed. So,
Exactly.
yes.
That's so true. They and also, relationships, partners, they
All
do
of it.
that,
Yes.
that marrying. It's really hard, but really beautiful.
Yeah. No, it is that beautiful. I remind myself, I'm like, I want this. I want to evolve as a human. I've asked for this.
Yeah,
So this is what I'm getting. Evolution comes with a cost.
absolutely. Keep saying yes. I've been married 33 years. I've
Congratulations.
packed my stuff and counted the CDs that are mine
Yes.
100 times. Because I've been ready to run from the difficult work, but he's my soulmate and my beloved, and he has taught me. I've walked over hot coals to learn about my complacency early on, to understand that when I was a people pleaser, that I was creating a dynamic for him that created insecurity in our relationship. And it wasn't until like the ninth therapist, because all the ones before, since he's the melancholic and the broody one and the one that had a little bit of a temper, they would ask him to count to 10 and move on. And they'd pat me on the head and say, and aren't you just so sweet and sparkly? Well, it was finally the last therapist after we met. And he said, Lori, I need to start seeing you one on one because you're at the heart of the problem. And I said, that could be true. I'm so nice. And
Yeah.
everybody, no one says that.
Yeah. Right.
And we went back to all the trauma, and all of the stuff in college and all
Yes.
of this part of being, and this is what I think about, and it comes into Ecology and all my work is the trauma, and according to Gabor Mate too, in his new
Oh,
book,
so good.
right? He says trauma is any moment that you cannot show up authentically as you are. So if you're not showing up authentically as you are, then what are you doing? Well, you're abandoning self.
Yeah.
So if we're upset with others abandoning us, but we're abandoning ourselves first, that
Yeah.
is the scariest, most central level of abandonment, right?
Yes.
Mm,
Yes. Oh, that hits. Right? It does. It does.
yeah.
So when you work with somebody, walk us through that process.
Yes. So I'm moving. I'm really at a cusp right now where I'm still weaving in the recruitment, which still has always been so nurturing and real. So I might talk to somebody about a role that's a VP role, but I can tell within the first 5 minutes that they need to cry, and they
Right.
might.
Oh, isn't that the truth? Oh,
And it doesn't matter, man or woman, everybody. That's the thing about the trauma of this world is that we all have our masculine and feminine in us. And this division that we have between humans and earth, our own thinking and feeling self, all we want is to come back into this love affair, this union together. So I find myself, no matter if it's career ecology, which I'm really stout, I can feel the pull right now, is to gift people, especially in this trough and this abyss. Imagine on the hike, you fall into the crevasse, or even like you're trying to make it to the mountain and you're not even sure the right path or which switchback to take, or is it even a switchback? Like how do you even get through this space where you could fall, you could starve, there may be no water, you could be eaten, you
Right.
fully rejected. I mean, this is the interesting thing that I found actually, Jen, is that our nervous systems, they're evolving a lot slower than our current world. All the technology, AI coming, all of these things, and our nervous system being ghosted, depending
Mm.
on where you are, also on the empathy and feeling scale, but really for everyone at some degree, you feel a sense of danger, like I
Mhm.
have been excluded. And then that links next, if you're not part of the clan, that you will be eaten by that beast at night.
Yeah, right.
So one of the things, that I'm talking to people about is just kind of acknowledging the trauma and say, let's look to nature. Let's look to 6.5 billion years of successful evolution to understand, first of all, what you're going through,
Yeah.
and to understand some very real and necessary expectations that you should have. But how do you keep your balance amid a world that is so distracted and harmed and hurt that they may not respond to you? And
Right.
they may not because they simply missed it in the ATS, they missed your application, that happens, or they're too overwhelmed, or they just don't feel the call response. They're not in that space of like what birds do for each other. Out our windows right now, I can hear them. The birds are chirping and they're getting a response back, so they feel safer right now, knowing that their family has food, or that they will reunite at the end of the day. And humans, we forget a lot of these natural tendencies because we're so locked in this masculine thinking, reasoning space. So I'm dropping people in through these really beautiful practicals of mindful interviewing. um,
Really? Okay.
Things like that.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what would happen in a mindful interview?
mm. First thing I say to somebody is, okay, this is going to blow your mind. I say to them, I say, but I want to go ahead and set this up, and let's be clear. Interviewing, and again, I've been doing it for 20 years, as well as in the middle of the debrief between the interviewer and the interviewee. So
Yep.
while everybody tells me what's real, nobody's pretending.
Right, right.
Interviewing, this is huge. Interviewing is not a performance. Not a performance.
Ah,
The internet will tell you it is. It is actually a service. It's actually, how can I help you know me? How can I help you know me? So when you come into an interview from a place of service instead of performance, trying to make sure that you're heard, admired, picked, selected, invited back, all of these, like, it's very separating. You're kind of looking at yourself through someone else's eyes. But when
yep.
you come in, how can I help you know me? Then you're almost like, if you could, you'd be like, I want to listen, and tell me, ask me anything. And what happens also is that the interviewer, when you come in that state, if they're actually not a skilled interviewer, and I would say only 20% are, the rest are regular humans giving it a go,
Okay.
you now have bandwidth to stay connected. Because if that funny question comes through, or that aggressive question, or that bizarre question, or that funny tone of voice, that you'll be more like, oh, you'll notice, and you might say, okay, this person needs help with that. That was odd, but let me lean in and help out. I want to solve this. It is a very significant tool because the ego at every single step of the way is giving you a reason to say, hey, you're failing, just like I
Right,
thought you would.
right, right.
Right.
And you're helping the person stay in their power and be, this is an equal, right? Like we're having a conversation
Yep.
and you're going to learn about me. And I want to not get in, like you're disarming the second you walk in.
Completely. But you
Yeah.
know what happens? That ego, and I'm sure you felt it many
It
times.
tries to fight back throughout
It
the whole
does.
thing, just letting you know.
Yeah, that next step, it's like, you don't need to do this. You got kids at home. You don't need to be on this mountain. You could be sipping a margarita. and the
Yes.
hammock right now.
Bonbons on the sofa sound fantastic. What are you doing
Really?
here?
And it's
Yeah.
telling you, hey, you got power, girl. I know you want power. You could turn around. You don't have to do this. So the ego is, I teach mantras the night before an
Yes.
interview
Okay.
because the sleep process, whether you're conscious of it or not, the ego is telling you, you didn't prepare enough. You're not good enough. So you wake up already sort of disjointed. So you're doing that Gabor Mate thing. Like you're like, he says, okay, I'm separate from self. Like I'm judging. I'm not feeling authentic. I'm not sure I'm good enough. So we teach mantras on both sides of that. And
Okay.
then, most critically, this is really fascinating. At the moment of hello, and most of interviewing hellos are video hellos now, used to be phone and then in person.
Okay.
So, at the point of hello, the ego, if you imagine a car metaphor, the ego is making a mad dash for the wheel. Now, keep in mind, usually interviewing, the heart's not even invited for the trip.
You're right. Right.
Okay. But in this case, they've been prepared. So the heart is behind the wheel. We started it off this way. And you know what? We have actually the ego in the passenger seat with the GPS doing its part, saying, hey,
Yep.
turn left, point two, boop, boop. But as soon as the hello comes through, the ego makes that mad dash and it opens the car and it throws the heart out and it runs over it like roadkill. It doesn't care. And the ego
Mhm.
takes over, and everything that's been learned about how to authentically relate is out the window. So I teach people right there, how do you actually keep your heart as sovereign? How do we
Mhm.
continue to lead from there with a very active, very strong ego? And thank you, ego. We know you did save us from the tigers back then, but we're in a modern world where I think we're being called as humans to lead from the heart. I think we've always been capable of it, because we're this spectacular type of animal, with
100%. Yes.
our
All day.
potential, right?
Yes. Yes.
And it's really through gratitude. Gratitude is it's a spiritual practice, prayer and other things that people do. And gratitude actually has an energy that radiates out from the heart. And if the other person is incapable of receiving it because they're in an ego place and they're just not aware, it doesn't
Mhm.
matter, because the person who's offered it, it's food for the heart. It's a bonbon for
Mhm.
the heart. And then that person now comes forward as a human being. It's
And what would
incredibly
be a
liberating.
sample mantra that you would use the night before or the like going
Mm.
into it?
I'm going to give you the second one because this is the one that I tell people that you should say the rest of your life. And it's
Okay.
actually based, again, going back to a principle of nature, 6.5 billion years. And the principle of nature is diversity and cooperation. Okay, so we know that nature requires that in an ecosystem to live. So
Yep.
this mantra is now based in science. And this mantra is quite simply, I'm a good person and I bring tremendous value to this world. Most
Aha.
people would not admit or agree that that's true of themselves. Or if they say it, they think it's trite. And what I say back is, do you realize that if you do not show up in any moment with your perspective, then you have denied that moment its full diversity? And there is no chance for cooperation that really exists to further love and prosperity for all. We
Mhm.
need you.
Mhm.
So it's pretty deep, pretty ancient stuff.
It is deep, but it works. I mean, I used mantras on the climbs, right? So anytime I was in, there's this, I'm afraid of heights, which is not a good thing to
Oh
be
my.
afraid of when you're climbing mountains.
Yeah.
And we'd have to go over those ice ladders at Everest,
Oh.
right? And I was just like, oh my gosh, because it's not like it's OSHA approved setup. Okay. When you step on that thing, it goes up in the air, nothing's flat, everything moves. You feel like you're going to fall 2,000 feet to your death. And I'm like, okay, I can. So I gave myself a pep talk. And then I selected a mantra. And I'm like, the mantra that's going to get me across from here to there is a safe step. And so I just repeated safe step, safe step, safe step the entire time so that I could hear it. And
Wow.
then it crowded out any other thought to like leech on and try to hijack my brain.
Yep.
I got to the other side. Of course, we had a dance party because that's how you shake all the nerves and get rid of it, right? But there is something. I did a speech yesterday and the excitement. I love being on stage because I love the energy transfer
Mm.
with people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I could feel myself getting anxious. And
Hmm.
so like my heart was in my throat.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. I'm going to swallow my heart. So it's going to go back into my chest. And I was selected to be a vessel for knowledge for these people. So whatever flows through me is for the benefit of everybody here. And
Yeah.
so anytime I started feeling my throat try to, like, my heart trying to be thrown out of my body,
Yeah.
I'd swallow it and be like, I am here to
Mhm.
benefit all the people that are here. And that's my only purpose.
Oh
And
my
like,
God.
you just have to,
Beautiful.
like, you have to keep putting yourself back together, right?
Yeah.
Because that
Yeah.
ego wants to take your heart and throw it out. It does 100%.
Oh my
I
gosh.
love what you said.
The mantra thing, I love this too. I'm so glad you brought that story up. I tell people when I'm teaching about the mantras, I said, once a day, my ego tells me these words, you're an idiot. And
Yeah.
it's still coming in. But the thing is, back about 22 years ago, it's funny, Gabor Mate says too, like when I was young in my mid 70s, I still, it's like, okay,
I know. I
this
love
stuff is
them.
happening, all through time. And I remember specifically when it was at the worst. I was like 22. I had a young child. I wasn't sure I was, a good mom. I had my own business as well, and may have been around, Great Recession, all this. And anything I was doing, the ego was like, "You're an idiot. You're an idiot." And so I started to practice then on my own, my heart having the last word. And so my heart would say, "Absolutely not. You're full of love, and you're doing your best." And I would have to go back and forth, sometimes 50 times, until my heart voice had the last word. Now, you could, if you were like right now, if I'm sitting here and if it started to happen, you would just have to see me go like this. All I would have to do is even shake it out. I don't even have to say it anymore,
Nice.
because I'm so practiced, because I
Yeah.
want my heart muscle. I want my love muscle to lead me in every course and every decision. And I'm still thankful for the ego. I'm not trying to say, don't like you, egos. This isn't a battle. But if I really want to thrive and live and be there and be courageous, this has to have the last word, 100% every time
Hmm.
for me.
No,
Yeah.
I agree 100%.
Mm, mm,
Now, in your field, like, obviously industry has changed, life has changed. It
yeah.
used to be cold calling, it used to be all of that. LinkedIn, right? Like, LinkedIn is where everybody is, and that is an important place to be,
Yeah.
right? Like, isn't
Yes.
that, tell me about LinkedIn and your perception of that in this whole pursuit.
Very, very grateful for LinkedIn.
Yeah.
It's really rising right now as a place with the highest integrity for what its purpose was.
Hmm.
We can look at Facebook, and the original purpose supposedly was to connect everybody so they could be friends. That clearly has not happened. And we can see too how Facebook originated, out of a very kind of toxic reason. I think initially it was about considering who's hot, who's not. It's kind of was born out of. No. And LinkedIn, from in the living room, the gentleman, I'm forgetting his name, I think it's Stephen something, in his
Okay.
living room, wanted everyone to have a chance in their careers. And he knew that it would be like this 6 degree, 7 degree connections, connections, connections. I remember seeing Jeff. Okay, Brandy's not going to say Bezos, not Jeff Bezos. It's another Jeff, but
Okay.
who was the CEO for the longest time of LinkedIn, and he spoke as a keynote at Wisdom 2.0, which was an organization in the Bay Area. Do you know this one? Do you know this
I
this
do not, but I'm like writing it down right now so
Oh,
I can
it's
look it
good.
up.
It's every year. And it birthed because as we moved for this towards this huge tech opening, at which I lived in the Bay Area for during, and of course, neither my husband or I, nor I, were number two on Google or number two on Yahoo, no.
Right. Darn
But
it.
some
Come
of my
on,
friends
people.
were. I know.
Oh, that's amazing.
But there was a lot of concern by very thoughtful humanists about what technology would do to people and to relationships. And so this CEO, who's now still on the board, he
Okay.
got up and he said, one of our C-suite, or one of our, highest ranking officers, their job is really to almost be like the poet laureate, to be the mindfulness instructor, to make sure that all of us executives keep our eye on our noble pursuits. And that's what I do as a recruiter. And I continue to see it in LinkedIn. I find that people are sharing what they need to. We're all humans, but there
Hmm.
really is this desire for connection and to help and to create a group and to drop in. And so I'm noticing more and more people are coming. And as a recruiter, I can tell you very practically that to help with the ecosystem ideal, to live your wildest, best, most connected life, let yourself be found there.
Hmm.
Create a profile and feed it. Have it just be a little corner of your garden. if you don't like social media or you feel like it's another one that you don't want to have. By the way, I'm not paid by LinkedIn. I don't work for them. But I want to say we recruiters scour it like bees coming out of a hive looking for pollen. And it's so fun to be found. It's so great to
Yes.
be noticed,
Yeah.
and the natural world is constantly connecting. The flower's like, yippee, you saw my pink. So now that bee is helping that whole entire bush have sex.
Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
So that connection's important. And LinkedIn is that for the business world. It is singularly that for the business world. And I love it. And I'm so grateful. I'm all over. I'm there all the time talking.
I'll,
I
well, I'll
see
tell
you.
you. Yeah, no, and I'm new to LinkedIn because here's the deal. I'm a mountain athlete and I really kind of hired myself out of a job years ago. So I wasn't really gone there for work platform needs. And my stuff is pretty visual. So I was on the Instagram platforms and things like that. Well, then I was asked to give a speech and they looked and they couldn't find me on LinkedIn. I'm like, yeah, I don't have a LinkedIn. And they're like, we're not hiring you. I'm like,
Whoa.
what? Like, okay, fine. So I'll get a LinkedIn. So about a year ago now, I got a LinkedIn account. And of course, when you're new,
Mhm.
you're just you're a little gun shy and you don't quite know and all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually you kind of get a little more comfortable with it. It's by far my favorite platform. By
Really?
far my favorite platform.
Me too.
And the people that you connect to there are just I don't know. They're more my people, I guess
Yeah.
is how I would say.
Yeah.
And it's been so fun because the other platforms, I just haven't been able to build the community around.
Yeah, because Instagram, if we think about it, it's a little bit more, the person who's coming to Instagram is a bit of distract me, please. I have a moment,
Yeah, right,
or let me see how somebody else might be more fabulous than me because but what's happening on LinkedIn is I really want to learn and connect and I want wisdom and I'm out there looking for those connections. So there's a little bit more of this intentionality to recreate the web. I love the stories right now. We talk about this transition that the world's going through. And I think a big part of it is reconnecting the web of life. And that's not only the environmental web, which is broken all over the place, but the human web. And Native
mhm,
Americans talk about the old story of Grandmother Spider and how she created the web for life and how it's been broken up in all these ways in all the modern times. And so we're here to kind of try to bring that web back together. And LinkedIn is a huge part with allowing that because I could go in there right now and feel that, I really want to see if I can make my way to meet, let's say, Jeff Bezos again. I want to try to connect and see there's a way to bring safety, emotional and social, that is so easy and so quick. That is there a way that I could get this in front of one of his people? So
mhm,
I could go in through Amazon. I could look underneath people. I can do a search for my school that I graduated from in college. I could look who's working there that graduated from my same school, maybe even my same year. And then I could say right out to them, go, hey, I'm a Bruin. Woo, I see you there doing great work. I have this idea. I wonder, and I can find something, an identity that we both might say, sure, I'll say hello. And maybe that'll make its way to Jeff. I mean,
right,
where else is that going to happen? It's so
right.
awesome.
It's
Yeah.
so amazing. Yeah, and I don't even know how to do it at that level. I mean, I'm like, okay, I don't know how to use LinkedIn. Never mind. Well, it takes you just. I was like, wow. Next time I
Yeah.
need to hunt somebody down, I'm finding you, and you're going to help me figure that out.
Oh, yeah. I'm teaching people right now through career ecology. When you understand, like a scientist, like a bioscientist PhD, when you get how easy it is, you just have to know the anatomy.
Right.
It's like that movie, The Biggest Little Farm. When you understand the biodynamic nature of farming, suddenly it takes care of itself and it becomes quite abundant. So I'm teaching everybody how it works. I'm like, so turn
Right.
it on and then just feed it a little bit of mulch. Come in just a
Yes,
little bit of weeding.
I
It's
love
great.
it.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're doing the recruiting still, but it
Yeah.
sounds like you're spending a lot of time just helping people live from their hearts, become mindful in their pursuits, and own who they are.
And specifically through that channel of work. And I have
Work.
found that I find that sometimes to bring the gift of liberation and so people can be happy is
Mm-hmm.
to find a significant channel that brings people a lot of fear because they're not adept at it or they feel lost. That can be becoming a mom for the first time. Remember how scary that was?
Yes.
Being
Yes.
married, your first job, graduating college. So, a very significant transition point is either being let go from work or knowing you need to leave, or it's your first time even out of college. And so, this, I wouldn't even call it a system. You know what I'm calling it now? Is career ecology is a process. It's a
Okay.
process of reawakening the ecosystem of your professional world. And it needs to be a responsive resume, not an artifact of the industrial age that's basically like a tag on a couch that says
Right.
what stuffing's in here. Mindful interviewing and awake, learn LinkedIn, be a master, feel amazing, feel that you're the master because you know and understand LinkedIn and how it wants to support you. All of this with live support and loving attention. So, really, anybody that is feeling pain from work, which I would say is 99.9% of us at one
Yes.
point or another,
Yep.
come on over. Let's talk. Let's cry. And let's make it fun. Let's climb that mountain. Let's get to the top.
I love this. I love all the things. Okay, so how do they find you? Tell the audience.
Yes. So they can find me at www.careerecology, those two words, as spoken and spelled, .com. And then I also want to have a special offer for your listeners.
Right.
And so I'm going to have a //podcast/JD
Okay.
for your
Perfect.
initials. Okay.
Yes.
So career college. So www.careerecology.com/podcast/JD. And what people will get is a discount on services, free chapter into Way of the Monarch book, which is all about this rite of passage kind of mountain climbing aspects there. Very, very much similar to that. And then also just the link and the invitation to come in and talk to me anytime on Tuesdays at 4:30 for free. Just come, tell me what your questions are, and I'll listen and I'll share back. So that's where you can find me. Yeah.
Woohoo! Look at this wealth of knowledge we had today. I took notes. I hope everybody listening has thought about the notes that they need to take, or at least highlighted the moments and the minutes of this podcast so they can come back to them at any time.
Oh,
Thank you so much for your time today.
thank you. Thank you too for your bravery in the world. You're very inspiring.